What the hell was that?
I don't know, but I
Like
started recording,
bell.
and it's a good thing that it doesn't matter because we can clip the beginning.
No, that's a good start. Maybe what the hell? What the hell's going on here, kids?
That entire nation.
Get off my lawn. Okay, all right. Intro us in.
Alrighty, welcome back everybody to Gerry Joy's Kaleidoscopic Cast. It's a great start. It's a great start. Hello,
Yeah.
gang.
I had to pull up the finger guns.
As one does, as one always does.
Yep. So awkward silence for a second just to
Pause for
welcome you
effect.
back.
Take a moment.
So, last time on a very interesting episode, we started a new mini series kind of about communication
Yeah.
and learning skills. And I think the first one was actually out here, staying on topic, which was a
Yes.
very hard discussion.
So hard. So very hard.
It's
I
very hard for both of us.
I don't know how we made it as far as we did in that without breaking or without making any undue comments. Like,
I I did laugh at the end, I think.
we made it
I think
really far though.
it got to me. It got to me.
As it would for anybody at this point, and that's fine. But I will say, I was
Hey,
pretty proud of us. Like, we did manage to. We found a topic. We found a topic and we stuck to it.
and which is actually kind of a miracle.
Oh yeah, like I'm very proud of us. Like, for a first attempt and everything, we did good. High five, y'all.
No, it was still long. We were hoping for shorter, but I thought it was good. It was better than the rambling that we can do.
Yeah,
So I'm
exactly.
proud of us.
Like,
Go
we
team.
like, as much as we did talk for a while, but we managed to ride that train of thought pretty tight together for the majority of it. So I think we did pretty good. Don't make that face. Don't make that face.
But
And
it's so hard, Gerry.
I know it's so hard. Anyway, but
It's so hard.
speaking of hard and long, today's point is the opposite, and we're going to be trying to keep it short, sweet, and being precise and concise, which is kind of like our second skill and sort of like our add-on. This go around, where we're going to try to keep in mind the whole sticking on topic, but in trying not to solo ramble for as long, trying to keep the idea kind of organized and coherent, and yeah, in a nice neat little
You're
bundle.
like, wait, am I rambling? You're like, uh-oh. Uh-oh, this went
Ba-da-ba-ba-da-dum.
too long. This is the opposite of concise. Okay, I actually am going to read out the definition of
Please
concise
do,
just so we
please
both
do.
have it in our mind. Everybody, close your eyes. Use your brain cells for a second.
Whatever's left.
Concise. Yeah, the two cells left. It's an adjective, in case you didn't know. And it means
What's an
giving a lot of. I will murder you. Yeah. Is that concise enough for you? Do I win this round?
Yes, go ahead.
All right. Giving a lot of information clearly and in a few words. I'm ill. And in a few words, brief but comprehensive.
Yeah, and it boils back down to what I talk a lot with my clients, where it's meaning and message over words specifically, where it's the idea that you can convey a lot of information and meaning in a message, whether it be a small amount of words or a large amount of words. You can say exactly the same thing, because we often use a lot of filler when we're talking, without
I would agree with
realizing
that.
it. And there are times where it doesn't really matter. Like, again, in informal conversation and just like, just chats, it's part of the game and it's fine. I think there are times though where it becomes a little bit weighed down and less efficient, depending on if you're trying to move an idea forward versus if you're just trying to have more of a superficial conversation.
Yeah. And I think that when someone uses a lot of words, it the ability like the probability, I should say, of being misunderstood is higher, in my opinion, because you're
Yeah.
confusing the actual meaning. Not every time, of course,
No,
because I
no,
think
no,
you
no.
and I use a lot of words and we don't really ever misunderstand each other.
No.
But like if you perhaps don't know someone very well and they're talking a lot,
Yeah.
then it is more likely that you're going to be confused by their intention instead of a clear, precise, concise,
Yeah.
could I say?
Yes. Well, exactly. It's the notion of less is more, especially here. And you bring up a good point where sometimes we tend to over explain a lot of things out of fear of being misunderstood, but over explaining in a lot of different contexts will have the actual opposite effect, because if you give too much information, like we only have so much attention span and memory span as well to kind of process, and depending on also how fast the person is outputting this information as well. And I know I want to ramble and just bullet train in speaking, so I literally will not give people the time to process the information as I'm saying it, and I'm aware that that is a problematic aspect, but that's just it, where we give so much and then we think that by explaining more it's going to be clearer, but you're making it longer before the person can like reach the end of it. It's a run-on sentence. It's the same concept as a run-on sentence. You can't keep a sentence too long because then you lose the plot and you're like, I forget what this was about. There was a point to this, but what was it? And we lose like the key element. And what am I supposed to like glean from this? Like what are my keynotes? It's much harder to do that the longer you go on.
Do you think that people talk a lot, not just because, like, I feel like there's different reasons why I
Oh,
talk a lot.
absolutely.
Like part of it's because I like the sound of my own voice.
Yeah.
Um,
You like the
Maybe not
attention.
literally. Yeah, I'm an attention something.
Something or other.
So like I'm in Discord calls sometimes and I'm like with a bunch of people or like a few people and my inner clown, my inner performer, my inner social bee comes out and like
It's
I'm just like
well, yeah, is that it suddenly becomes your kind of like your comedy bit. Like you're like, this is my Netflix special, you know.
this is my time. This is my chance. Yeah.
Exactly. So like you kind of it becomes your it's like welcome to my TED Talk, basically.
But
And
it's not concise. Like you know how I was saying yesterday I was talking to that dude till super early in the morning and there are parts no I was very tired so I'm giving myself a little bit of leeway.
fatigue will do that to you. So
Yes,
yes,
I was not as concise, but I was like, there were bits of the conversation where I was just like having a thought that was valid to the conversation, but I was like cycling through words as I'm explaining my point, so I'm just repeating myself,
well it
and I'm just like, why are you still talking? You already said this. It's your third time repeating it,
oh yeah.
just to like, and I again that was a lot of tiredness, but like
Yeah, but it's that whole, isn't
I
it like
noticed
the,
it.
yeah, isn't that the whole like the Michael Scott quote where it's the sometimes I start a sentence and I don't know where it's going, but I hope I find it along the way or something like that. And like that's just it. Oftentimes, I think the problem or the reason why we have trouble being precise and concise as well is because we start an idea with no idea of landing it. Like we have a goal, we have a point, but we don't actually make a landing pad for it.
Mhm.
Like we worry so much about context and giving up enough information, but we don't actually work on the punchline. Like we don't actually work on figuring out where it lands, how it ends. Like we forget that okay, this like how do I even know that I'm done talking? How do I know that I've actually said what I meant to say and that my idea is done? And like we don't. We just the idea could never end, and that's the whole problem. And what we're going to try to do a little bit less of today.
We know we were done when we interrupt each other.
Basically. Basically.
But so that's why it's hard for I think me is because like well again with the conversation last night, it was awkward at points because there would be like periods where we're just like sitting in a silence because we don't like I've never talked to this guy one on one before
Mhm.
and we don't know each other.
No.
We're thousands of miles away. We have different cultures. It's not like we understand each other well. And we're good at communicating. We're very like we're both intelligent enough people, but like we don't know each other. And so there were
No.
periods where like and also his mic would cut out. So he'd be talking, he'd be like, so like I had this like also shout out to that guy. He has a very nice voice. It was very soothing. But he like would be talking and then his voice would like cut out for like 3 words and I'd be like,
Uh,
"What? What?"
yeah. No, well,
So it just didn't help. But when I talk to you, I'm fine because
yeah.
like
Well,
you and I know each other so well and we have like we interrupt each other in our regular conversations, but it works. Like
yeah. Well, we
we
have that.
blend really well and we know when we're done our point because the other person's like, yes, actually I agree because this
Exactly. But
yeah.
we have that rapport where it works well. And that's just it. It works well on like a one on one conversation where you're not worried about overlapping audio, as is more the
Yeah,
case on here where we were like, this is going to be a problem. But you bring up the good point where I think we are afraid sometimes of silences, and it depends on the type of call as well, where like a voice chat where you'd also like in those moments, if you don't have a visual component, you also can't base yourself off of any nonverbal cues that the other person
true.
might have as well. And that's something that I think as well, like sometimes that's the reason why we end up cutting each other off, or we're like, okay, fine, I'll give it to you, because we see the person going like just constantly like, oh, like baby bird, just yeah, exactly, like just going like I want to say something, please let me, mother, let me talk, let me
I'm just like
speak.
breathing into the mic like
Exactly. So
I need to say something.
let me speak. Let them speak. So yeah,
Sorry, I
exactly.
have to tell a story
Oh
about
no.
this. It's so
Oh
funny.
no.
Like I
Keep it
my
short.
sister-in-law, yes, my sister-in-law and I had another friend that we were all 3 of us were friends, and this is like back when in our early 20s. And she's my best friend who became my sister-in-law. So we were like really close before she got married into the family. But the 3 of us would hang out, and one time we were having a sleepover, and me and the other friend were talking, and we were like going at it. We were like we were just chatting in the bed, and then my sister-in-law was like at the foot of the bed on another bed, and she just sits up and she's like, would you let me speak? And like but loud, like really loud, and like we still tell the story because like it was just so funny because she was absolute silent and we're just like going at it, and then she sits up straight up and she's like and I'm like, oh, it's just so accurate because like that's sometimes what you have to do in conversations. Anyway,
Well,
it's just that
it's
story cracks me up
and
still.
but that's, and especially when you do not have anything that indicates that the other person wishes to speak. Like that's just it, and which is funny. Which makes me just think of like now on Zoom calls or Teams calls or whatever, like virtual calls where we have like like putting your hand up option so that you know that somebody wants their turn, which I think is brilliant because it's so necessary. Because it's yeah, just sort of like having a little bit
Oh
of a
yeah,
notification pop up where it's like, I have something to say.
in that accent,
Yeah,
exactly. That's what they
that
handled as.
literal actual accent all the time, and regardless of what language they're speaking in too, for that matter.
Yeah, yeah, okay, all right. I'm gonna think of that now when my coworkers do that in our teams meetings. I have something to say. I'll be like, okay, okay. I don't think we're being concise anymore.
No, we're getting, and we're
Okay,
getting off topic.
so yes, we're tanking already.
Oh
It's not even that
no!
far.
Oh no!
Okay, so we decided on talking about Gerry.
Oh, I'm the one who's going with this topic.
I'm announcing. Well, you're announcing it. I'm giving you the floor.
The floor
Here,
is
here
mine.
you go. Here's the floor. It's so pretty.
Oh,
So pretty. Take it.
it's so
It's a bit
heavy.
heavy. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I'm not sure necessarily how to announce it, because we wanted to go with relationships, talk about relationships,
Purity?
but yeah, but relating more to purity. And what we mean by purity here is that,
Don't freak out, everybody.
yeah,
Everyone's hackles, even mine. Whenever
I
I see the word
know.
purity on a window, a video, Freud is like, tell me again what you think of your YouTube algorithm. I'm like, they're windows into souls.
Too true. Too true.
No, but like whenever I see like purity on a video, I'm like, no, hard pass. Not because I don't value it, but because it's always like cringy and like,
Yeah.
God, I just want you to be a pure little flower, blooming
Yeah. Yeah.
gently.
So, I think the best way to kind of intro the angle is by explaining it, and I will try to be as concise in my introducing the topic of why we're deciding to talk about relationships this way, because I feel like there are a lot of ways that talking about relationships is overdone, in just saying, oh, how hard it is and how interpersonal relationships and guys versus girls or whatever inclination that you may have. But that I came to a realization more recently, in just for multiple different reasons, but of just trying to be in a point in my life where I'm trying to prepare myself as best I can to when I meet the person I want to be with for the rest of my life. And coming to the realization of how poorly I've been doing that, but not for the reasons that I thought I was. And just because when we think about like purity, often we think about it of like, oh, no sex, be abstinent and all of that.
She said the S
I
word.
know, I went there, but my hot take and plausibly unpopular opinion or controversial idea, point being,
Might not be as hot as you think. Just saying.
who knows, but I came to this kind of weird realization where like we know a lot about like just the effects of porn and how just detrimental it is to the way that we view sexuality and sex, and just how we view each other in those acts, and in just the rapport that we have, and just how it skews reality, and how it's like it's not real, and
It isn't?
well, it depends what filter you use or whatever, I guess. But point being that, and we all know like just how much it ruins relationships, and even regardless of like what kind of religious or non-religious background, like we again, it's a problem all of its own. However, that being said, we give a hard time to porn, as we should. But that being said, I feel like we don't give a hard enough time to other things that also affect the way that we view relationships and romantic and or sexual interactions, such as, well, any other type of media, really. Like, and just
like, if I can clarify,
yeah,
or maybe this is not how you see it, this is how I see it.
sure.
For me, I feel like there's so much focus on men and like how they mess up sexually and like mentally regarding females. And I think that's valid, because the prawn industry is, let's be real, not catered full. Like now I think it's trying to get more into women and like the trying to cater towards them, but like for the majority of time and the majority of content, it's for men. So like I just want to clarify that like I feel like there's a lot of heat on men, and I agree with that heat. I put the heat on as well, while also understanding the struggles. But I don't think enough heat is put on women.
Yes,
and how they view men. I think I just want to clarify, anyone listening or watching, like that's what we're trying to say is like men get the heat, women don't get enough heat, and we're going to talk about why.
Or I feel it's whether it's what
or how.
I think it's maybe less the men versus women and more the media with which it's used. And it's the fact that we give, like, let's say a hard time to the videos and the websites, while I think it's that we minimize the detrimental impacts of just every other type of sexual type of contact, like erotica, hello, like smut, like, I'm sorry, the only, like, we think that it's inherently better or different or not as bad, and I think for me it's like the only thing that I can see inherently is just because it doesn't involve another like the sort of exploitation of another human being. But beyond that, like, because it's just fake people, because they're its actual characters, like, nobody's being harmed in that process, fine. But I feel like the detrimental effect to the fact that, like, those also aren't reals. Those are also stories. Those are also scenarios. And scenarios that can be even more wild and just ridiculous, and you're set up unrealistic fantasies and expectations and are just an escapism and missing the point. And one of the reasons like that it hit me so much recently was in watching, I don't know on what platform, whether it was a TikTok, a reel, or a something or other, a short, but it was this husband or spouse or partner just like leaving the house and just telling his wife, oh, you know, just don't cheat on me today with any fictional characters. And she looks at him and goes, too late. And it's the kind of thing where you go like, haha, that's funny. But I, in that moment, just had like an overwhelming sense of like, that's actually not okay. Like in the same way where we kind of like will laugh about like casual alcoholism where we're like, ah, ha, ha, drinking, but you're like, actually, that's kind of not okay. There's a deeper problem to this. This is much more problematic than we give it credit for.
I actually don't find that joke about don't cheat on me with fictional characters funny, like at all. Like I think
No. I was like
it's
horrified, actually. I was like,
so like you know how my sister has a YouTube channel she streams and stuff on and makes videos for. She actually recently just uploaded a video about a book she read that for the channel. It was not of her own enjoyment, but basically someone else on YouTube covered the rise in bestial so like non-human like harlequins, kind of like smut books. So like one was The Dragon's Bride by, I don't remember her name, but my sister covered, she read the book, she found it online and was like, I'm gonna review it just to see what the state of female literal, like this female literary world is and what they're doing. So she reviewed it. I actually read it too, most of it, because I was so curious. I was like, what is it like? Like what, you know, what are women into? What is selling? Because these books that in the video were like at a public bookstore, like on display, and it was like all these like dragons and weird other things. So I read it and like it was a pretty basic smut book, but like a dragon with two penises. And it was like so crazy. It was so crazy. But that's why when we talked about the topic, I laughed because, you know, my sister wasn't going at it from a moral point of view. She was going at it from a literary, and I'm like, that's great. Like, pick apart those books and why they're actually so like terrible for the literary world and how they're bringing it down and everything. And like, she had really good thoughts on it. But for me, I'm like also like morally, like imagine you're like married to a guy, and that's why I said female versus men. I'm not trying to separate them, but I do think this is something a lot of females are more prone to do. I don't find any men really reading like smut books or like engaging in like, I guess they are engaging in more erotica. Like there's also like, for example, the this is more of the nerd world, but like the Nikkei games where it's like a girl. Remember our last conversation where I
yeah,
sent you the meme? So it's like a girl who's dressed like really skimpily and has like extremely disproportionate body parts, shall we say. And she's part of a storyline that you interact with and you guys get close and all this stuff and like, you know, there's a whole storyline and guys love it. Like they eat that shit up. And it's like you're basically imbibing like soft core to mid core prawn.
oh, absolutely,
Like
absolutely.
that's so I'm not trying to divide the sexes, but I do think like for specifically the books and the like let's say like the Tumblr side of things and like
Yeah,
a lot of female.
yeah,
Wattpad, my sister looked at the stats, 92% female.
yeah. And I mean, AO3,
92%.
like just
Yeah.
anything that you have like fan fiction, and that's just it. Just the realm for that has just exponentially just it's rampant. And I don't know that we're as worried about it as we should be. Like that's kind of the point I feel here where I yeah, I don't know how much we're realizing that it might be having a poor effect. And like to a similar degree, like and as much as like not even just for the sexual stuff, but even just romantic, like we've known for ages like we say for ages that like romantic books or like romantic comedies or like, you know, those just the cheesy TV movies and whatnot, like they ruin you for relationships and what romance is actually like, and I get it. Literature is not meant to reflect reality. They're an escapism, but that's a problem in and of itself as well. And just,
Right.
I think, again, we are underestimating how much they are influencing our expectations and our ideals of ourselves and of our partners. And that's kind of the whole point of coming back even just to the purity idea where for me, it was just this realization where I'm like, I'm just screwing myself over and screwing my future partner over if this is all I consume. Like if this is the basis of what I'm trying to build on, and as someone who has very little actual relationship experience that I can't counterbalance off of and like nuance and be like, oh, but it's not real, like
And how will you know what's real if you haven't experienced it?
What-
You're going off of
yeah,
media.
and even if you do have experience, the more you consume that, the more like you have that in your mind, and you, again, we create fantasies and divide, and especially nowadays dividing reality from fantasy becomes a very wonky line.
Well, we crap on men for watching prawn and having unrealistic expectations of women and sex, and
then there's
women
book
are
talk.
for example, the Dragon's Bride book I was talking about, in it, I didn't find the woman character as annoying as my sister did because she's more atypical. I was like, this is pretty basic for being a woman. Like, we overthink and we just circle, and like, that's just the way it is. So I thought she wasn't written poorly. But the one thing that made me laugh and be like, what? This dragon man is like the most thoughtful, sensitive, like his entire personality, like he's a strong, manly man, of course, but his entire personality is around protecting her and helping her. Now, I'm not saying no, I'm trying to be concise. I think this is a good thing. I want to preface it with that. But I think a lot of men are not focused, especially from a relationship that I had. Like, I realized women want men to be all about them, but rightfully so, men are not all about us. They have like other priorities, and like obviously women shouldn't be putting the men first of everything too. But I think specifically like in me, and I think a lot of women are like me, we want the man to be like in this book where he's like sensitive and emotionally available and like just like, you know, has really good sex and like, you know, is pursuing us and like does everything right, and even if he does something wrong, he like realizes it and figures it out and comes after us, and it's just like the perfect script for a male. And in reality, like, men don't give a shit. And like, I don't think that's bad, but I think it's just as harmful that you're writing these men that are like, it's not even about the sex. I don't care about that. It's the like emotional and like mental like perfection that these women are like viewing this man as. And it's like, you're never going to be happy with a regular human man because guess what? They're flawed. They're really, really like, they don't care about that kind of stuff. They're just not built to, and they have to grow to. But that's not a natural like thing for them. So it's like, that to me is the unhealthy thing. It's like, we're reading these things, and like, I don't read smut, to be honest, but women read these things and they're like, oh, I wish I had a man like that. And it's like, you're not gonna.
Well, and I think it just boils back down to, regardless of the media or medium in which you consume this stuff, is that because as human beings, we're very, very selfish and self-centered and self-pleasing. We forget that the
Literally,
point. Yeah, well,
sometimes.
exactly.
Yeah.
But like relationships, that's not the point, though. Like we, and especially from like in our case, from a sort of more like of a Christian religious standpoint, relationships. Marriage, it's like it's not about you. It's not meant to be about you first and foremost. It's about each other. It's about mutually putting the other person first. And
I didn't realize that though.
Like,
when
but
I
no,
was
but
in
if,
my relationship,
but like
I
it,
didn't like it. You hear it your whole life. It's like, oh, it's not like you're supposed to serve
It's not
God
about
and
you.
others, and then you know, Jesus, others, you, joy. Like, but like, I don't think we're taught what the reality is of being in a
No.
relationship. Like when I was in my relationship, that's something I think about actually more often than I thought I would. I was so self-focused. Like I wanted everything to be the way I wanted it to be, the way I thought it should be,
It's all about
and
you.
for my benefit. And it's like, no, it doesn't work like that. It's two people. It's two
Well,
people.
exactly. And I think that's just it. And we're forgetting in consuming that content is that it's not just about you. It's not about you. It's not just about you. And that the choices that you are making aren't just affecting you, but they're affecting the people that you're going to be with. And it's is this how you're preparing yourself? And in our like all that it's doing is feeding the notion that it's all about you and all about what you want and all what you want to be getting out of this. And it boils back down to why also, even just our reasons for staying or wanting to be with someone where we're like, oh, they're so nice to me, or they take care of me, or they're this and that. And again, not to say that those aren't bad, or that those are bad things. Like they are inherently good things. However, I think like the notion of even just like unconditional love where it's like, I love this person for who they are, not what they bring me and not what they make me feel kind of thing. And like, again, ideally they bring something to your life in that process. But the idea where it's something where sharing someone that you can have like the good fight with, and that again, mutually putting each other first, and in like you get your needs met because you're both mutually putting the other person first. Not me trying to get from the other person. It's in the I will be giving because I know in turn I will be receiving.
I think there can be an imbalance.
Oh, absolutely.
And I'm thinking in my own relationship, I think it's actually nuanced because
Sure.
in my relationship, I loved him. I would have done anything for him. I was like ride or die. Like, you saw, I was a total simp. But
Yep.
yeah. But at the same time, I had in my head an idea of like how it should be, and like I wouldn't have left him for it, but I would have complained or like been petty and sulky when I didn't get my own way or something.
Well, here's the
I think
thing.
there's like that's the thing. I don't think like this discussion is like it'll make or break you, but I think like a lot of women, and I'm speaking this as a woman, so I can't talk about men really, but as a woman, I know that I made myself more unhappy because A, I wasn't communicative, and B, my expectations were more than what my ex could give me, and frankly, he couldn't give me what I needed or what I wanted or what I deserved. But at the same time, like I shouldn't expect more out of him than like what he can give me. And that's where you're saying when you meet in the middle, the two sides are giving, you have to make sure that person is to be able to give you as well. But like to be relating it back to like the purity and relationships and women, or not just, let's not make it gendered, as you say, like, people who are imbibing in media that's like erotic or
even romantic,
overly sexualized. Yeah, like, or even like my sister said, she was younger, her friend and her, or well, she didn't as much or hardly at all, but her friend especially was super into romance books, and like they were both Christian, and it was like these Christian romance books. Some of them weren't Christian, but like, they were just, and they weren't like full on smut, like, it wasn't like, the Dragon's Bride level, but it was
hope
like
not.
definitely spicy. And her friend like went through them like butter, like just like, and like my sister eventually was like, whoa, okay, because even she was reading them and she was like, these are really terrible. But even that, I remember my mom saying to me when I was a kid, be careful what you're reading, especially romance. Like I remember her having a conversation with me and my sisters or something, and she was like, be careful because like reading too much of one thing, especially romance, is gonna like, she probably said something crass like rot your brain, but like she really meant like it's just not gonna do anything helpful for you. It's gonna like give you bad expectations, and it's gonna put your head in the clouds at a bad level, like too high.
Well, it's junk food. It's junk food basically is what it is, and that's just it. And it's the idea where you're just setting yourself up for so many difficulties down the line, and the whole notion of like the ear gates and the eye gates, like we are what we eat. And even just music, even just songs, like the romantic songs and like the expectations, and you're like, I want to be like, it's like every single Taylor
people are no,
well, exactly, but it's like, it's, you know, oh, like every single Taylor Swift song is about me, or it's like, oh, it's finally, you know, all the love songs, I can relate to them, blah 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 blah, and you're like, is that a good thing to, because so many out there, I'm like, oh. And if you listen to so many like songs where you're like, they are so terribly selfish or odd or cringy, and you're like, that's interesting. Like it only works because
it's
you've
all about me.
Exactly, where you're like, that only works because it's over a beat. But the second that, like, some of them are more poetic, but others it's like you remove the beat and suddenly you're just reading it and you're like, ugh. And like you
that's a lot of pop songs, let's be
yeah
real.
no, but like, and I know that you create like these just weird expectations and distortions of mind, and just like, I know that just for the longest time, like I had this fascination with the notion of like a first kiss, especially as someone who took me long enough, but like, because it's the notion of, you know, the true love's kiss, and every single movie ends in that, and it is the sealing, the bond, and blah 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 blah. And it's like, but like, as like a hopeless romantic, like I built it up as this big old thing in my mind, and it was like, what is this? And it's just like, reality is very different, and that's very okay, because like, it's the kind of thing where if you makes you feel like if you experience anything short of that, you're doing and being something wrong, or the other person's doing something wrong. And like, when our fantasies are like, when it's not met, then we're like, we're very, very disappointed, we're upset, like, and it's the idea where it's like, those are like, they're kind of misplaced feelings at the end of the day. Like, they make sense, but they're just misplaced in that moment where it's like, they're not helping anybody.
You know what part I hate in romantic movies or shows is when there's like a couple that gets together and then they're like burning for each other, right? They're like, yeah, like I just want you so badly, and then they finally like have sex and get it over and done with, and then like 3 days later they're like, no, it's just there's like nothing there, and I'm like, okay, first of all, you're sick. Second of all, like, that's not like, that's so incredibly ignorant. Like, yeah, you want to have sex with each other because you're like, what is it when you're infatuation, that you're in the infatuation lust level, but that doesn't mean that you can't have a good relationship just because you have to dig a little deeper. And I always like it, whenever I see it in a movie or show, I actually have a really hard time not stopping watching it, because it's like, that's not a realistic image. In fact, romantic movies are starting to completely, like, I don't know if you feel the same after like
Yeah, no,
I've like, now I'm like, I literally cannot, and mine was not a good relationship per se, but it gave me a good blueprint as to what it should be, and like or it gave me the baseline of like what a relationship is and what what interactions are like. And it's not romantic all the time, most of the time. It's not pretty. It's not always fun, and like, there's a lot of conversation and a lot of like sticking through these really boring like meh patches. And it's when people are like, oh, it's boring, I'm like, you are broken. Like, you need
exactly
help.
No, exactly. And I think like, that's just it, where we are built in wanting like excitement and all that, and like enthusiasm, but it's the, and I was actually listening to a podcast earlier where they were like, and this wasn't relating to this at all, but I think the point still remains, where it was like, we seek like excitement and enthusiasm, we lack endurance, and like, that's really it, where we forget that like, life is not about the butterflies and about like the fireworks and the grand gestures. It's in the day-to-day mundane little things that get you through. And it's like, though they might seem boring, but they're normal. And I think like, if we make ourselves feel like normal is wrong and is bland, and there's like, that's why we seek other things. That's why people cheat. That's why people go elsewhere, because we're made to feel like something's missing and something's wrong, even when it isn't. Like, it's part of the process. That's normal. And yeah, we're missing out even on the beauty of the little things. Like we've made everything so shallow and so showy that we've lost the beauty and the poeticness of the little things. Like just the little things that I feel like that's like, yeah, that I've grown just in a very different appreciation, where like as much as before being in a relationship, like I'd watch like again just the shows or the movies or the read the books, and like you'd have this sort of like, oh, I wish it could be me moment afterwards. And you know, now in the sort of the post moment of it, where there's a little bit of a huh moment, but it leaves like a bit of a sour taste in your mouth. Like for me, that's what I felt in anything. Like at first I was afraid that I'd be like, oh, it stings, it hurts, why couldn't this be me? And no, instead I'm just left with like a weird taste in my mouth where I'm like, nah, that ain't it, bruh.
I think as we get older, actually, also, like, we've both been in relationships, so I think that's a factor. Another factor is, I think, maturity and age, as well as no, actually, that's just my point. Like age and maturity, like because as I've gotten older, like I used to watch a lot of Korean dramas. I used to watch a lot of like romantic movies. I still watch some romantic movies. Like I do, I go through phases where I'm like, oh yeah, like I want to watch the rom-coms. I get so bored and so um like it's so pithy. Like it's so like empty. Like you like all American shows are like Korean dramas are still better because they have more depth to them because there's like 16 episodes and they're going into their relationship more. And they're not just gonna bang on the third episode. But like the American movies, like for example, there's that one with Zac Efron that came out recently. It's Zac Efron and he is like an actor and his assistant's mom he ends up like falling in love with,
Huh.
and it's like it's supposed to be a rom-com, and I watched it because I was like, ooh, like a new rom-com. I am that girl. But I was like, by the end I watched it through because I do finish movies, but I was like, I could have, like, if I could just go back and not watch it, I would, because it was like it was so empty. It was like they saw each other, they wanted to sleep with each other. They started to sleep with each other. The daughter interrupts, and then the whole movie, it's like, it just was like so unrealistic. And frankly, and no, I wouldn't even say unrealistic because I think that's what a lot of people do nowadays. I think a lot of people go do things based off of their sexual desires, and they sleep around or they
The flesh.
yeah, they're like, well, like the arguments I hear all the time, like, well, why wouldn't you sleep with someone before you marry them? How do you know if you're sexually compatible? Like that's always the argument I hear from people. And like, so you can just tell in our culture, it's like you got to sleep with them to know if there's a chance. And I think that seeps in, and like as you said earlier, we're now unable to maintain relationships, or like the amount of guys I talk to online, even just this year, who are like, yeah, women suck. I'm just not interested. I haven't met anyone that like is worth sacrificing being single for. Like someone just said that to me the other day. I was like, like not because I was upset because I wanted to be that person for them, but I was just like, that's bad that we've gone to this level of like,
And
men are like, I'd rather be alone and not have sex or not have a family and not like have someone there with me for all the comforts of a partner. I'd rather be single because it's too much bother. Like, that's a problem. And I'm not saying it's only on female side, it's on both
oh
sides.
no, because I
But
mean,
like,
let's be honest. I've had my fair share of that, especially in the past few years, where I'm like, if this is what's there, I don't want any of it. Never mind. Never mind. It's gonna be me and my plants and whatever cat I ever eventually get. Where it's like, nah, nah,
our
nah, bruh.
QPP. It's
Yep.
gonna be our
Oh,
QPP, bro.
yep. 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 Oh no, the
40, what
countdown.
is it, 42?
Uh, something like
41?
that.
What was it for me? 42 or
42
41 or
for you,
something?
39 for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
the countdown's still on. It's still running.
9 years. We got this.
They got this, boo.
No, I hope we find someone, but I will not lie that like I agree with you. Like I am in the same boat where like pulling it back to the idea of purity and stuff, like I don't think I, as a Christian woman, has have prepared myself fully. I don't think I'm unprepared for marriage, but I don't think the nuances of like boundaries with dudes and like keeping your mind, my mind is not pure for men. Like when I like them, let's just say that.
Yeah.
Like
No, well, I think
and
that that was the part that I realized is that I made the mistake that we, like a lot of people will make regarding other things where it's like, I waited until it was happening before I took it seriously. Like for me, it was I'll take it
did you
seriously.
take it seriously?
Shh.
You were kind of in this like,
Shh.
is it
Shh.
actually
Shh.
happening?
Shh. No, but
Yes,
yeah,
Jerry, you're
no,
in a
but
relationship.
but point being that to me it was the like, oh, I'll figure it out once I'm there kind of thing. Or it's like it's not important until then. Like it's the this starts being important now, but it's in the no. This is important beforehand because like for me there was almost a part where it was the well, if I don't have anybody, I might as well just satisfy like my desire for romance in like through vicarious living. And realizing now post that where I'm like, and that was my mistake. That's where the mistake was in thinking of because that's our mistake even just during because it's like this is not an alternative. This is not what's supposed to get you by. This is not supposed to like it's not like it's this isn't what prepares you or like what fulfills you or satisfies or satiates you in any way.
I would say it's not a healthy substitute. Like
No.
it is, and like
No.
a lot of I think there's like a discrepancy in Christian females because we're like either not prepared at all sexually or like we have experience unfortunately sexually and it's very hard to like rein it in and be like the godly woman. So and I think that there's a lack of discourse. It's just not talked about.
Yeah, no,
And so
exactly.
like there's women who don't know their own bodies at all. And then there's women who know their bodies too much and are like sexually uh you know
Awakened.
impure mentally or like and I'm not saying that judgingly because like I can't judge that I was am like it's a struggle and for men as well like we're all out in the woods here but I think that I think that's what bugs me about it is like I in my regular discourse in like IRL with people and stuff I feel like I do sound like I hate on men a lot but it's only because I like men. So I have a like I'm more critical of it because I would like to be with one day. Maybe.
And y'all are
If
being
I
so
can
difficult.
yeah, you won't get in line. Like but I can totally agree with the idea that like, you know, women are down bad. Christian women are down bad. And we're not really is that my cat back
Yep.
there? Oh boy.
Yep.
She probably wants food. I should feed her after. Um, yeah, like women are down bad, but also like, yeah, there's I think it's like the silent impurities that or the quiet ones, the smaller ones that like it's we might not be watching porn, but we're imagining things or we're reading things and imagining things or we're writing things.
Oh, well, exactly. And that's just it. It's the power of the mind, whether it be through images or through and that's just it where it's like we're like, oh, it's the stuff that you see. Reading creates and conjures up images just fine and dandy. Thank you very much. Like that's the kind of the whole point is that you get to decide and paint it however you wish. And sometimes
Right.
your imagination is wilder than any image could depict. Like
Oh,
and
females are cray. And I'm
exactly.
saying that as female. I'm not even like throwing y'all out. Like, I'm right there with you. I cray, we cray.
We cray
Like,
cray. We cray
yeah.
cray.
And like honestly, again, I talked to quite a few guys on Discord and stuff, and like I actually had a discussion with that guy yesterday about porn, about its effects. He's Catholic, so he's like very anti-porn. And he talked about his own like journey with it and with like we got deep. It was crazy. Like porn and its effects and how like people don't realize how deep that effect goes. And I think we talked a bit about like the like it's not just porn, it's like other things. So like yeah, I forget what my point was.
Hmm. Hmm.
He was at it yesterday and his struggles with it. And like, oh, and like other guys on Discord have also said like like I know they say it jokingly somewhat, but they I think they also still think it like they think women are crazy. Like, and they say it too much for it to be a joke. And they'll say it to me. They'll be like, "You women are crazy." And I'm like, "Yes, but no." Like it's like we all are crazy in our own way.
Oh
We all
yeah.
think each other are crazy because we are totally different people. And like frankly, like
Well, we refuse to meet in the middle because we all want what
yeah,
we want and we don't care about other people inherently. Like, yes and no, but it's the I come first mentality. I want what I want and what I want and I need, and you better give me that or else. And I think like there's such a problematic like, and I was surprised even in myself of how much that was brought out. Like I was not like I consider myself a fairly like altruistic and like caring person. I was
yeah,
I was so selfish. I was
yeah,
I shocked and like honestly kind of disgusted myself with just how selfish and like self-indulgent and like just how much like, and we can say it's like, oh, I want to do it for them, I want to do it for them. No, it's for me. I do it for them for me. Like, you know,
yeah.
just the and the
Welcome.
and just the how much and yeah, and like just the amount of different expectations and like the feeling of like, why do I constantly feel disappointed? And it's like because you made yourself an
Mhm.
expectation that A, sometimes you weren't even explicit about, that they couldn't have known, and B, also didn't make sense that you had. Like that wasn't realistic that you would have that expectation for them. Like could it be a desire or something that you could want or a preference? Fine. But to expect that and or almost, and like I just said, is we are also in such an entitled society and mindset because we are given too much what we want when we want it and how we want it, that we don't do well with disappointment and delay and just like we really really don't. So like
Yeah.
and I just yeah, it's those kind of things where it's like it brings out the best and the worst of you, and I was in, like, oh no, like I again I was kind of like again shocked in horror of just myself and who I became in those moments, and I was like, yeah, no wonder that this is like a thing, because it's like, oh my, oh that's this is a problem. This all makes sense now. Like it just
I
the
actually
whole
think
process is so
that
problematic.
it's normal,
Oh yeah.
and I think that that's why a lot of Christians are like, relationships are no joke. Like, don't go into them thinking that it's going to be super fun and easy, because there will be fun bits, but a lot of it's going to be you coming to the realization that you're not the center of the world, or you battling with that like realization. And I've seen it in relationships of Christians and non-Christians, like
Yeah, I was gonna
everyone,
say like not
where
even.
one partner, no, it's not just Christians,
Yeah.
it's like everyone. It shouldn't technically be like that in Christian relationships, but I've seen it too many times where one partner is the boss and the other one is revolving around them. And
Oh yeah.
and like it's not biblical, first of all, not because of like a patriarchal thing, but because you're supposed to serve each other. And like I think the problem is individualism. Like, and maybe that's something we can talk about next podcast.
Yes. Yes.
Because I, again, this like the guy and I were talking about this all yesterday. We went from like porn to individualism to society to relationships, and how people can't handle like delayed gratification, and they just want like
Oh
everything
my
easy and
gosh.
now and accessible. Like we went so deep. Like this conversation was so good. That's why I talked till 5 a.m. because I was
Oh
like,
yeah.
this is so good to like chat with someone. And also like he's Israeli, like a single Israeli dude who like has a very different view of things from me, but somehow we are so aligned, and it's like so fascinating being like, yeah, these
Absolutely.
values are like so like we just see things and we comment on them, and it was very fascinating seeing talking about like, yeah, male, female, society's expectations of both, the way that both interact with each other, but also just like the romanticization, that's not a word, romanticization maybe,
We
um
can consider it a word. It's fine.
but like how relationships nowadays are so romanticized, when in reality they're not. And he's like not a romantic person like at all. He's like, if I was like, I should have been born in the old days where you were arranged marriage and you just provided and took care of your like family and you like had kids and stuff, but you weren't like overflowing with emotion about your partnering thing. And he's like, that's where I would be at. And I'm like, that's not wrong, but that's not welcome in this day and age. Like,
No.
to be
Well,
straight and unemotional about your partner is like next to like
we've
the, I don't know.
we've unbuilt the whole institution of marriage as it was initially, and that like the whole notion that like even just a few hundred years back, like marriage was exceedingly functional and like was a business thing. Like the notion of being together with someone that because you love them, like marriage for love and marriage by choice is a very modern concept. And even the notion of like, oh, God is someone out there for you, like that's not even technically like a biblical notion. Like honestly,
No,
like
actually
it
it's
really
not
really isn't
at all.
like, well, that's just it. And it's like the person that you love and cherish, and like yes, you want to love and cherish the person you're with, but not like not in the way that we've been made to believe, again, through media and over romanticize whatever the word was that you used of just of it all. Like we've bastardized the whole concept so bad, so bad
100%.
that we've missed the point so much, and then we wonder why it's not working. And it's like, bruh, we broke it. It done been broken for a long time. Like
Everyone needs to read The Meaning of Marriage by Tim Keller, whether you're a Christian or not. Like you just like it is. I remember reading it when I was dating my ex, and I was like, I don't like these things. Like I agree with them, but I was like, putting them into practice is like, some of them are easy. Like his idea that you
sure.
don't marry the right person, you marry someone that is right for you in that moment, and they're going to change. I That still runs through my mind because I love that idea. Like you have to learn to love your partner through the stages of life, even if you don't like who they're becoming, unless they're a bad person. But like, you know what I mean. You have to learn to interact and care for them as they come. That's very anti-societal. Anti like society is like, if you're not beneficial to me, if I don't like what's happening, if I don't feel like you bring value to my life, if I don't like
Oh
what's
yeah.
happening here, you're out, you're
Oh
cut.
no. Well,
And
like
it's like,
yeah.
no, no,
Well,
no,
well,
no,
that's
no.
just it. And
Gotta
the
push through. Gotta push through.
yeah. But we there's even like this whole like kind of glorification even of like divorce culture. Like it's so bad, and like even just the fact that like we're kind of like just praising the idea where it's like this wasn't good for you anymore, it didn't benefit you. It's like I'm out, yeet, and it's like we've broken the notion of family, of home, of marriage, like all of it. And honestly, but honestly, we can't even blame the heathens. Like even within the church, we've been missing the point for
Oh,
so long. Like we've, like, and that's just like the church is good at being like, oh, the gays or the whatever. It's like, nah, we straights broke this thing so bad, so long ago. Like, nah.
I
We did that all on our own. Thank you very much.
I actually disagree. I think the government broke it a long time ago. I
That
don't think
too.
the straights did. I actually don't think straight people are the problem. I think the problem is that the government was like, we're going to make you register with us to be married, and we're going to make you go through a whole process. And I think, well, that just brings me to a whole conspiracy, but like,
Oh
not conspiracy
no.
about marriage, but I just think the government tries to get money by getting involved in things in our lives. And I think there's certain things that are involved that they should be. And I actually think marriage is one of them. Now, I understand from a like polygamist point of view where having a registered marriage is beneficial, but why does it cost you money to register a marriage? Why do you have to go through all these legal hoops to like change your name and like do all this stuff and like have it, all this stuff? Like it's very complicated, and I actually think that the government has overcomplicated something while at the same time making it super vague and super unserious. Like you
Oh
can get your
yeah.
like, it's something you do going through, like you can get married at a Vegas drive through. That to me, that's I
Oh,
What?
well,
That's
exactly.
crazy.
Well, that's just it. And but even and just the way that like I know even just talking with like friends recently, like church friends where they had gone to like non-Christian weddings and they were like, it's a completely different thing. Like it's not the same game at all. And like they were
I mean,
like,
are you surprised? Like,
oh no no no, not at all. But
yeah.
they were kind of like they were like the people seemed highly unprepared, or like it's as if nobody knew how a wedding was supposed to go or was supposed to happen. Like one of them said like they was, I think it was done like it was like an aunt or a cousin who was like officiating, and like nobody kind of really knew what it was, and they kind of like forgot the part where you're supposed to like sign the register, or like when you have to sign afterwards and that you need the witnesses, and like it's the kind of thing where generally you have it like all filled out beforehand and all you have to do is sign, but like it wasn't even filled out. Like the whole thing was a little bit of a mess, and you're like, and like it's the kind of thing where those ceremonies are like just very short and very kind of like bland, where it's like you say your vows, I do, okay, bye, let's go to the reception. Like everybody's in it for the party. Like everybody's in it for the reception. Nobody cares about the wedding. And like that is the part that like gets to me, because like as someone where I like, and I've said this many times where it's like I want to be married. I do not give a lick about a wedding, like other than the fact of like I like again of the actual serious bond of, you know, being vowing before church and everything, and under God of, you know, being with this person till death do us part and all the rest. But like the wedding itself and the reception, like I practically get hives at the idea of having to plan a wedding. Like I'm like I just want to elope. I just want to elope. And I might do that, all depending. But like it's the kind of thing where for me, like, but that's just it, like even just the way that we view weddings, like historically and now, like it's so different. Like now it's a party. Like before, it was a celebration. Like you had so many people because it was a community thing. Like everybody was involved because everybody was going to be involved in the marriage and just everything afterwards as well. Now it's just a party to show that you have money or whatever. And like that's why so many people even delay getting married, because they're like, it's super expensive and for what? And especially if you get all the benefits of being married without having to be married, except maybe like the tax benefits, why even bother getting married? Like, if you're going to do all the things, if you're going to live with each other, if you're going to just, again, like, for so many people, it's like, oh, you know, what's the difference now that you're married? It's like, not much, you know, we were with each other before for so long. Like, other than just being like, now I can call you husband, now I can call you wife, where it's like, if that's the only thing, like, sure, it's cute and all, it's a nice sentiment, but, like, if that's all there is to it, then we've lost the plot big time.
Yeah, I think there's a devaluing of marriage, of relationships. They've become much more casual. Um, that's a whole conversation for another day. Because honestly, like it's fascinating how you can trace it back to things that both males and females did, the government did,
Everybody.
you know, how like the war affected it because women went to work and then didn't want to go home from work. And at the same time, like, what was it? During the feminism waves, they were basically being told, like, you'll be happier if you work. Um, and it's devolved now into like this battle of
Mm-hmm.
like, and the battles in your own relationships. You know, women are belittling men, men are disrespecting women.
Nobody's listening
It's
to
not,
anybody. We're not listening
no,
to each other.
no. And
We're screaming at each other, listen to me, while not listening to the other person.
well, I think we're screaming at each other what the other person's doing wrong and how crazy they are and how disrespectful and terrible. But at the same time, it's like,
We won't
why?
admit, we, and we,
Why are, but like, why? Why are men so shitty and like casual and like why do they treat women so terribly? Why are women so disrespectful
and
and
crazy.
demanding and like unrealistic? You know, both sides fall into the same pitfalls technically, just maybe at different, you know. And so like that to me, and I don't even know how to fix it per se, because I think it's a very
Oh, it's
nuanced
a large
thing.
issue.
You have to deal with it one on one in your own relationships, and to have that, you need to have good parenting. And that's like when people are like, I don't want to bring kids into this world. I'm like, bro, that's the only way you're going to change it for the better is if you have kids and you parent them well. And I'm not saying everyone has kids or everyone should have kids. Like, I'm not like
the person who's like, why aren't you having kids? But I think if you can have kids and you want to have kids and you're able to have kids, like, and
You,
afford them, like, do it, because that is how you, I'm not saying it in like a take over the world Christians, but I'm saying bring up your kids critically thinking, bring them up to respect people, to be thoughtful and kind, and to be smart, and like do the best you can, not to like shove ideas of either pure the world or just like because I grew up in a Christian household, and that actually was detrimental, the way that my parents at the beginning taught us stuff, because it was very like just I was very sheltered, and that's why my relationship actually went poorly a lot. So and I learned a lot through that. So I think sometimes you have to learn by doing. So I'm not mad,
you
but I'm just
learn the
like,
hard way.
yeah, it's just, it's all a journey. I think that's what you and I are finding out, maybe to draw us to a conclusion. Like, we both have now been in a relationship, and we both have struggled a lot with certain things, failed a lot at certain things,
So many mistakes.
and learned like so much. Like, it is, I still, like, it's been 2 years for me, and I'm still like,
Oh
oh
yeah.
yeah, that's why I did that. Or like, like, it's still so fast. That's why I talk about my ex relationship a lot. Not because it's like I'm not crying about it anymore per se, but it's just like it's such a big moment that is so, it's like a big learning ball, and I'm like constantly, or Rubik's cube, a learning you Rubik's cube, and I'm just turning it over my
Oh
hands, being like,
yeah.
oh,
Like
okay,
just
that's why I did that, and that's like he did that because of this, and like, you know, like, I would like to have this in my next relationship, or like, wow, I really am not good at, and it's so applicable to how I view men, and like how I interact with myself and others. And it's just, it's good to have experience, in my opinion. And like, it's hard because you don't want to tell your kids, go have a failed relationship where you make a lot of mistakes and get hurt a lot. That's not what parents are going to
no,
do.
no,
But
and like that's just it where there are better ways than others, and like, and I know that that's where I benefited from your experience in my experience as well, where like I know that, like, again, I definitely didn't do everything right, but I know that in trying to learn from other people's experiences and knowledge and wisdom, and like there are certain things where you have to learn for yourself, but other things where it's like, again, like history, learn from history so that it doesn't repeat itself. We are doomed to repeat it otherwise, and that's just it. Whereas it's the, if we want to break the cycle, then you have to know the cycle to begin with, and that's just it. And that's just it. And like, and just knowing certain things and seeing it with you, where I, for a lot of things, I feel like, again, and it's the double-edged sort of like, knowledge is power, but it's the, with great power comes great responsibility, and it's in the, I know better, so now do better. And I tried to, didn't always did good with it, but I tried. And I know that in doing that, I saved myself a lot of hassle and a lot of trouble in a lot of different places, created different problems elsewhere in the process, but still. But that's just it, where you learn different things in different ways. And I think there are ways of approaching it where it's like, how do we do dangerous things safely? And in a way where it's not going to be perfect. You're going to mess up. You're going to make mistakes.
yep.
But here's what to look out for. Here's, like, try not to hurt yourself more than you need to, for lack of knowledge and knowing better. Like, there's a part of it sometimes where we're like, I'm gonna go see for myself. Like, that's on you. But there's certain things where you're like, I literally didn't know any better. And to be fair, there are a lot of things where, like, you won't know any better until you're actually actively in it. Like, to be fair, like, there's a part where it doesn't matter how much you hear, how much you know, you gotta be in it to live it and be like, oh, now I see what this is. But at least knowing a little bit what you're looking for and what to expect helps, instead of just being like, I know nothing. This is alien territory. I don't know what I'm doing. And, oh, well, let's, hope for the best. How bad can it be? And it's like, what's the worst that could happen? And it's like, oh,
it was bad.
Boy.
It was very bad.
Yeah, it's
Speaking from my experience, I should say, like,
yeah.
And the narrator was like, it was indeed very bad.
Yeah. It
So,
did. It, in fact, did not end well.
no. But it's okay because now I can go into another relationship one day. Maybe. We'll see. I'm
Yeah.
pretty done with dudes, but who knows? I'm actually a very hopeful person. I always
Yeah.
have my eye out for someone special, but
That salmon.
more like yeah, someone who can handle this. Let's
All
be
of
real.
that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because I'm intense, so I'm like,
No. You what?
yeah. But yeah, so basically to conclude, we have to not be hypocritical with how we act and what we engage in as male and female, like if anyone, like you know, whether you're religious or not, like you're responsible for how you view everyone else and whether that lens is twisted or messed up from something, and like question yourself whether this is helpful or beneficial or wise for you to be engaging in. Like, does this help your view of a certain group or a certain situation? Because we just do things. Again, I was saying this to the guy yesterday because we were discussing diet and like health and stuff, because he is constantly trying to just like improve his life, and he does not do it successfully all the time, but he was like, it is a battle, but it's something I'm invested in.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I'm not, and I want to be, but I'm just not. And like, why is this? Like, why are we not invested? And that's when the delayed gratification came up, and like the idea of like investment for a later win. And that's, I think,
Yeah.
what purity is. Like, it's like
And
withholding now from engaging in certain things. That's like, for me, it's like withholding
oh
now for
yeah.
engaging in certain things so that later, if I get to the point of engaging in them with my husband, it will just be better. Like,
Yeah, well that's just
I'm
it.
not going to
It's
be like, it'll be so much godlier. Like,
no,
yeah, technically maybe, but at the same time, for me, it's just like,
it's
I will feel better. Like,
yeah.
it's simple.
Well,
I will just be
it's
happier and like more. I will like not have baggage. I will not have like, to tell him about my 6 exes.
yeah.
Like,
No, but it's the idea of you reap what you sow. So
yeah,
what are you sowing? Like that's
yeah,
literally what it is. It's what are you investing in? It's the idea where it's like what are you spending on and what are you investing in? So don't be surprised when you like your account comes up blank, or that you find like your bill comes up and you're like, what? And it's like, this is what you spent it on.
I can't afford this.
Exactly. Like but you get to the point and you're like, oh, it's like, oh, I haven't put enough in my college fund. And it's like, whose fault is that? Kind of thing where and like,
You spent it all on Twinkies. You're like, ooh.
exactly. It's like, oh no. So like, that's just it. We underestimate that part where we're like, I'll start investing, like, once they're here, and it's like, no, you got to start beforehand.
Oh, I've heard it so many times from guys. Like, so, and maybe women do it without saying it, but I've literally heard men say it out loud. Oh, I'll start being more disciplined when I find someone. I'm like,
It's like,
ain't
and
no one
no,
gonna want you.
exactly. And it's like, it's not,
Okay?
it's not supposed to be the effect. It's supposed to be the cause. Like, it's the idea where you find and meet the right person because you've set yourself up for success. And
Yes.
and I was listening. I think there was something, forget what it was, but it was something to that notion of, are you prepared? It's the, I want this, I want this, I want this. Well, are you preparing for it? Right. Or are you just waiting for it to drop out of the blue and be like, and it's like, sometimes we are delayed in our gratification because we actually haven't prepared for it. It's like, this thing is not coming into your life because you aren't prepared for it. You literally aren't prepared for it. It's like, it would be the notion of a farmer where it's like, oh, I want really good crops. I really want good crops, and I need it to rain, You haven't sowed a seed, buddy. Don't wait until it rains before you plant anything. It's like, plant.
Or like your equipment's broken down. How are you gonna reap the wheat if you're not taking care of your property? Like, you gotta be upkeeping and aware, and like, you can't just expect things to either be planted or either to be growing or to be ready to harvest or be harvested.
Yeah.
Without work.
Well, exactly. It's the idea where it's like, I'm going to check and make sure that everything's going to be fixed once it's time to harvest. It's like, it'll be too late by then. When it's time to harvest, it's time to harvest. You don't have the time to be fixing a bunch of equipment and barns that needed to be, that needed to be fixed and could have been fixed months ago. Like, it's like now is the time to
going down this farming metaphor.
Sure,
I'm like,
sure.
I'm like, what are we even talking about
I
anymore?
know.
All I'm thinking about is tractors now.
And
like,
to come back to the thing, I have to say, I don't know that we succeeded in the point of this episode. I don't know that we really stayed on topic, nor that we were necessarily uber duper precise and concise.
No. I don't think we were as inconcise.
Yeah.
That's the opposite of concise. I don't know if we were
abundant.
Like, we didn't. I don't think we totally failed.
No.
We failed at tangenting.
Definitely.
Yes. But conciseness, I don't think we did 100%. I would say 50-50.
No,
Because there were
it wasn't as bad.
where I could tell we held back and we did move along. So, like, we've rambled way worse. But there was rambling.
Yeah.
There was rambling.
Yeah. I will say, but comparatively to the other one, I feel like we might have not had it as easy this time. So it might be worth doing like a second try on this one. But yes, I definitely do feel like we were better. But
well, my question is, like, how do you even be concise? Like, do you just like use, like, do we just like do like one sentence and then the next person is like one sentence and then the next person's one sentence? Like, how, like, you know what I mean? Because while I'm talking, another relevant thing to what I'm saying is able to be tacked on. So then it's like, do we just sit here and like slowly, like, maybe that's the point, we have to slow down and like
I think we need to
and be like,
yeah, well, because I think that's just it, is that like and honestly that's the part where people are like, oh, you even in writing where it's like, don't write too long, like be precise, concise. It's actually a lot of work. Usually being precise and concise is done like in hindsight rather than foresight, because it's you blather on and then you remove the excess off of it. It's hard to do that on 100%. Your first go. And if you want to do it on your first go, it means you've given yourself enough time to think beforehand to do that clipping before the words leave your mouth, not as they're exiting. It's too late once they've exited. But even earlier, like you had that point where you kind of lost the plot and you were like, I was going somewhere with this. And like that, again, there was a lack of probably in conciseness because you kind of lost your point, because
I think so we have to maybe like rethink it, because it's like,
sure,
how can you be concise about a topic that you're like we're very like casual, so we're just
sure.
like choosing a topic basically before we call and stuff. So like, how do you practice conciseness at a topic that you aren't prepared for, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think we're kind of setting ourselves up to fail a little bit,
more
especially considering we are very quick moving individuals.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that we can't practice it, but I think we also just have to temper our expectations, and so should you guys, about like how, like, I don't think we can expect to be concise the entire time.
No, and
I just don't think that's realistic.
Nope, and I think, but it's interesting, and that's kind of even our point here, where the goal isn't necessarily to succeed, it's to examine. Like, this is a it's very experimental, and seeing, is it even feasible? And I think what we're seeing is that, like, that's just it. Trying to have a more casual conversation makes it that much harder to be precise and concise. And I think that, like, in my case, even let's say in like my line of work, when we work on that, you start with close-ended questions. You don't start with open-ended. The more open-ended you go, the harder it is to be precise and concise. And even like, and that's just it. But is that being precise, concise can often fall into something that's almost more like interview-esque, because you're just throwing questions and answering them quickly and then moving on.
I was gonna say, maybe we should, like next episode, do more of like a Q&A with each other.
Yeah, like that's just it. It's instead of trying to have a long conversation, because I think having a discussion isn't oriented for precise and concise, because it's meant to be elaborative. So I think, but again, I think this was just very, very insightful. Like, this is the fun part where, as much as we were like, we're gonna practice skills, I think this is just fun to kind of explore, again, the different facets of what communication can be and how you can apply or not apply different skills and why they work or don't work in different settings. And that's okay. That's okay.
And frankly, I don't know about you, but I actually had it in the back of my mind like timing and
Yeah.
also like being concise, and I didn't
Trying.
manage it completely, but at the same time I think it's also just a good uh like like I thought in my head of like, am I listening really for the sake of listening or answering? Am I going on and on for the sake of talking? You know, am I taking up a
Mm-hmm.
lot of time? You know, so like I'm not saying that I'm obsessing over it and like losing it, but it's just it is a good reminder to be
Well, it's that
like
it's
to
there in your
engage in
mind.
conversations with people. Like sometimes you just get carried away. A lot of times I get carried away.
Yeah. Wouldn't know
That's the
that at
definition of me.
all. We wouldn't know that at all, would we?
That's why I was up to 5 a.m. this morning. I got carried away.
And speaking of getting carried away, why don't we call it for tonight?
Okay.
Think this
Well,
is good.
thank you everyone for tuning in and listening to us harp on and try to figure out our lives and figure out how to communicate better. We appreciate, you know, the three family members that listen. We love you
Yep.
very much.
We're so sorry. We're so sorry.
Shout out to my fam. But yeah, thank you for coming along for the ride. And yeah, we hope you enjoyed. We'll see
Yep.
you next time.
Bye.